going on?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Just really quickly, wanted to tell you guys some exciting news. So Artadia is an organization for the past 17 years has offered curator-driven direct grants to artists. We do that in 7 cities across the country, and we are also very glad to do that in partnership with NADA, where we have offered unrestricted funds to 7 artists who have exhibited at the New York and Miami fairs. We invite curators to review all of the artists that they see and pick an artist based on the merit of their work. And Heather, do you want to do the honors in announcing this year's awardees?
Yes, this year we had the honor of having Ian Alteveer and Amanda Hunt as our jurors in the process, and they've chosen Summer Wheat.
Who happens to be here today.
Usually we're on the phone. But yeah, she's here, and she's said that she'd be willing to say a little bit about her process.
And she's showing at Friedman Gallery, which is booth 3.01. Yes.
Hello. Thank you so much for this award. I'm very honored and feel very grateful and surprised and shocked.
She just found out 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. So my process is basically centered around the idea of transforming paint into different perceptions. And I like to turn it into a sculptural object and then translate it into something that is convincing as another relationship, like a tapestry or a shoe or another object that you might not see as an actual paint sculpture. So I like the idea of remapping paint into new form and changing the way that you're able to see it and walk around it and think of it. So that's where I'm coming from.
Amazing. Thank you. Congratulations. So again, she'll get $5,000 unrestricted dollars courtesy of NADA and Artadia. So Ian and Amanda, Ian is the Associate Curator of Modern and Contemporary Art at the Metropolitan Museum. And we'll be working on a Carrie James Marshall show that will open later this fall. And Amanda Hunt, who's the Associate Curator at the Studio Museum of Harlem, and came from Los Angeles where she was at LAX Art before. So we invited them to speak about diversity and particularly just things that they are interested in right now, and just to hear a little bit from them. So thank you guys so much for doing this
so much.
Thank you so much. We both want to thank Artadia for asking us to participate. It's a real honor to spend time actually just looking at artists' work. And we love the organization. We love the fact that the money goes directly to the artists, and I'm sure put to extremely good use. Yeah. So what we kind of discussed talking about is diversity as practice in what we do, and how do we make an effort, I think, in what we do day to day to include a more diverse group of artists in as curators. And one of the artists I've been working with over the past almost 3 years now has been Carrie James Marshall. Carrie was born in Birmingham, Alabama in 1955. Moved as an 8-year-old in 1963 to South Central LA with his family. It was 3 weeks before the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing, but it wasn't a way out of the frying pan and into the fire. 2 years later in Watts, there was the rebellion, of course, which Carrie also witnessed firsthand. But in Los Angeles is really where he also found opportunity, even as a very young child, to have artistic experiences that really enriched his life. And that access, I think, to museums, LACMA, in fact, opened the same year as the Watts Rebellion, 1965. He had a scholarship when he was in 7th grade to do a summer drawings class at Otis. And so I think Los Angeles for Carrie really represents a place of opportunity. In a way, one thinks of an artist prize like Ardadia's, it's also giving artists opportunity. And so how do we as curators give artists that kind of same opportunities? And I think the way we saw cooperating and co-curating a show of Carrie's work, the first major retrospective of Carrie's work in this country, in partnership with the MCA Chicago, where the exhibition opened 3 weeks ago, almost exactly, and LA MoCA, where it will travel after it's at Met Breuer this fall. We really saw that as being part of our desire at the Met to include more artists of color in a program that, as far as modern and contemporary art was concerned, had not been necessarily as diverse as one would want it to be. And so our program in Breuer, I think, really is about including a more international scope, more women artists, and more artists of color. And that's in a way to complement what's already in the museum. I mean, if one thinks about what's in our walls, what's 5,000 plus years of art history from around the globe, not just Europe and the West, but South America, Africa, Asia, Oceania. And so how do we represent that worldwide scope? How do we look at artists through that lens of history, deep history, wide history? And Carrie fits, I think, very well in that, so much so, in fact. So it's also great because Carrie has a history with the Studio Museum in Harlem. He, after he graduated from Otis in the late 70s, 1979, I think, and spent a few more years in LA, he came to New York in 1985 to do a residency at the Studio Museum in Harlem, and was there, and that's where he met his wife, who was working at the museum.
Which I just learned.
Yeah, right, Cheryl Lynn Bruce, who's now a great renowned actress and who is involved with Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago. But it's Studio Museum that gave Carrie access to the city, and so I'm really curious to know about that, the great legacy, more about that great legacy of that program, how you guys choose artists for that program.
Well, I think there's a nice kind of dovetailing today. We're talking about diversity in our own work as curators, but also in getting to look through the fair today and in choosing Summer's work. I think we kind of put both of those things into practice. As a woman working with material, very traditional material in non-traditional ways, we kind of got to work some of that out in this process. But the Studio Museum, for those of you who don't know, was founded in 1968 in this civil rights moment.
An amazing year.
A revolutionary one. To really create a space for artists of color to show their work, to have a support system and network, to be incorporated in a collection, in a collecting institution. I know we have to do that. And so Carrie, in a long and wonderful tradition of artists who have been included in our Artist in Residency program, which is a part of that legacy of supporting artists really at beginning stages in a process or in a practice, and supporting them over the course of a practice and a lifetime. So Carrie being one of our family members in that way. David Hammonds has also come through the program, Wangeshi Mutu, incredible people who we all know and love and see across institutions internationally at this stage. So really thinking about the Studio Museum as a diverse space, supporting diverse practices, supporting people of color. We've expanded our mission since 1968 to include artists of African descent, but also artists who are inspired by Black culture. So that's another way to kind of expand thinking and consciousness around these kinds of categories. But really, the Artist in Residency, I think for me and probably for a lot of my colleagues, is really the most exciting kind of aspect of what we do at the museum. The Artists in Residence, there are 3 of them each year. They're housed on the 3rd floor with their studios facing 125th Street, and that tends to be a porous membrane that informs a lot of the work that's made during that time. And this year I'm managing the Artists in Residence, and we'll be curating their exhibition. There's an exhibition that is kind of the culminating moment for these artists each year. So this year we have Jordan Castile, who actually we could even talk about kind of in the lineage of Carrie James's work, the colorist tendencies, the representation of Black life and culture in a myriad kind of representational form, bringing that kind of experience and community to life and to museums. So Jordan is a painter who was educated at Yale. She's an incredible painter. You'll all have to come in July to see her work, along with E.J. Hill, who is a performance artist from Los Angeles. And he's been working towards some really exciting things this year. And Khalil Huffman, who comes out of a more writerly background. He's a poet, but he's also a visual artist who's done an incredible job building up installation spaces and a lot of exhibitions over the last few years. So they're all bringing something very unique to the space and to this year and working with them. So what we'll do is show them in July, and the exhibition will be up for several months, and then the museum, as we do each year, will collect work from that exhibition. So already at the beginning of our relationship with these artists in this kind of formal institutional way, we're supporting a practice over time by bringing it into our collection, caring for it, traveling it, exhibiting it over and over through different thematic exhibitions that we develop over time. So really supporting diversity in that way has been paramount to what we do at the museum. And it's a happy coincidence that Ian's working with Carrie this year, and there's really a nice kind of thing that we can share in that way. So maybe we should do a program then.
We should definitely do a program, and I should add actually that the work that the Studio Museum bought in 1986 from Carrie's exhibition there is in the retrospective. Yeah, so it's incredible to see the career in a way come full circle, and also I think in a way end up at the Met, which is a really important thing I think for the artist. Carrie, whose project has always been about placing the black figure in the tradition of painting, in galleries with the likes of Titian and Rembrandt, and where the black figure hasn't been represented before. And so we're talking about history painting, grand old master painting, but also the black experience as well in this country, and all of that, which is all the more potent and all the more necessary, I think, these days. So
Increasingly.
Yeah. So that, it would be great to do a program, I think, absolutely. We'll talk about it, yeah. And I think as a kind of intellectual environment for artists, I think it's really exciting to think about people working in a museum. And artists I know come to the Met all the time too. It's a source for them, it's a resource, it's a place of inspiration, and it's also a place of challenge. And something we've been doing with artists lately is we realized, I think, a few years ago that our halls are kind of haunted by artists day in and day out, and so why don't we ask them what one of their favorite works is in the collection and see what they say, and make a slideshow about it, basically. So we have an amazing ongoing project, the Artist Project, which you can see online. It's live. It gets released in seasons of about 20 artists every 2 months. And we're actually nearing completion on the sixth and last season, but that's an amazing number of artists who we've talked to. We really made a point of asking everyone who's between young and old, established, early career, mid-career, international, and women. And so it's a really fascinating look at the things that are unexpected things in many cases that an artist might be looking at any given time. And I think there's a place for the Encyclopedic Museum in this story. It doesn't just have to be a small institution. It doesn't have to be in the kind of biennial sort of circuit. It doesn't have to be at the art fair. It can also be in the halls of somewhere as traditional as the Met. And so that's very exciting for me, and that's why I've, in a way, wanted to stay at a place as kind of maybe slightly more inflexible, somewhere more established like the Met, and I think there's room there for this kind of experience.
Well, I wanted to get back to the idea of the collection, because I just had a moment thinking about one of my last trips to the Met, where I saw Juan de Correa, is it Velázquez painting?
Velázquez painting, yeah.
Which is, I don't know if everybody's seen it or is familiar with it, but from what I understand, it was, I don't know if it was a studio assistant or if that was even like the terminology for it at that point, but it's a representation of a person of color in a really regal, like gorgeously rendered painting, as only Velázquez can, right? And the power of seeing that person, that body, that image in the space of the Met, you know, even in 2016, has meaning and resonance. And then when I had first gotten to the Studio Museum about 2 years ago, we all kind of begin with a collection show. We have over 2,000 works of art in our collection. And so coming into something like that and catching up on the history and you know, the eclectic eccentricities of our collection, to kind of paint a picture and create a story was incredible. And what I really gravitated towards were portraits, representations of Black people in painting and sculpture and all kinds of media, and getting to pull that from the racks and from the drawers of our institution. So to think about that kind of in this vein and lineage of Carrie, then looking back at art history, back at this large canon, which is so exclusive, right? And has been exclusionary towards some of these bodies and these people who influenced the work, helped create it, were nameless in many of these images. Really like the power of that